Hello there, pupil. For today's lesson, we are going to be covering fractions, decimals, and percentages. So in this column, we have the fractions going all the way down to 1/15. On this column, we have the decimals going all the way down to 6.66 or 0.066. And then in this column, we have percentages going all the way down to 6.6. Now, a decimal will always be beneath, or not always, but in this case, they're never going to surpass a whole because we're discussing fractions. A whole is not breaking anything. A whole is a whole number. So although you could have, for example, 1/1/2, which would mean 1.50 or 150%. In this case, we're just going to be analyzing everything that is less than a whole. So, same thing with the decimal points. The decimal points are never going to supersede or go over 100% because then that would mean that it's more than a whole. It's always going to be under 100%. There might be decimal points to it, but it's still not a decimal. It's still a percentage. A decimal is going to be formatted in this way. Meanwhile, a percentage will have a percentage sign after it. It's going to be the percentage or the amount left, rather, in a whole. Meanwhile, a decimal is the actual amount left. It's pretty much the same thing expressed in different ways. All three of them are the same thing expressed in different ways. So let's begin. And also we're going to be using this nice little cute little tool to visually see how the fractions break up. So let's start off with the beginning, the whole. We have 1, which is a whole. So thus it's going to be 1.0. So we're taking the whole, we're taking the number, the fraction, and we're putting a decimal after it to turn it into a decimal. So 1.0. 1 and 1.0 are the same thing, just expressed in different ways. And then we also have 100%, which is the same thing as 1. So it's the full pie without any pieces taken out. And it's expressed in this one unbroken block, as you can see. Now, if we split that into two pieces, if we split 1 into two pieces, we have 1/2. And if you were to try and express 1/2 as a decimal, you would get 0.50 because the decimal has 100 points inside the decimal. So if you were to split up 100 points, you would get 50.50. And what is, if you only have 50 points out of 100 points, what percentage of points do you have? Right here, 50%. So you have half the block left or half the pie left. Thus it is 50% of the pie left. Thus you have 50 points of the pie remaining. Thus it is 1/2 of the pie left. And the way you would express that in a block is by splitting the block in half and having 2 blocks within 1. 1/2. Now, let's continue. The next section we have is a little less clean, a little less neat, a little less round. With 1/2, you have a solid half. It ends right there in the 10th place. This is the 100th place. 10th, 100th. So in this case, the 3's go on for infinity. It'll always perpetually be 3's because you can split down that difference perpetually since it's not as neat or as even. If it was a 4th, for example, then it can neatly be expressed in one tiny number. But since it's a 1/3 of a whole, it doesn't neatly fit, so it's forever trying to splice off that extra bit that doesn't neatly fit. So if we were to split 1 into 3 parts, you would get 1/3. And if we were to express that in a decimal form, we would get 0.333333333, and it would continue going forward. Same thing with the percentage. So we would have 33, since it's the big chunk. It's not 3.33. That's about 1/33 of a block. Instead, it's the big chunk because we have 3 parts inside of the pie. We split the pie into 3 pieces. So one big chunk is 33, another big chunk is 33, and another big chunk is 33. If it was 3.333, it would be tiny little pieces, all split off in 33 ways. I'll explain a little later. So we've split the pie in 3 ways, in thirds. 1, 2, 3. Threes. Thirds is another way of saying threes. So we've split the pie up, and we've gotten this uneven decimal, but that's naturally the number, which is we've, in this 10th place, split up the big chunk of pie into threes. If the 3 was in the 100th place, then that would mean we split it up into 33 pieces, as opposed to the big chunk, which is 3. The closer you are to the decimal point, the bigger the number is. So if there's a 0 here and there's a 3 here, that means it's a smaller number than having a 3 here and a 3 here. And percentage-wise, the way this is reflected, a 10th, so that means you multiply this 3 by 10, 3 by 10, or 33 by 10, 0.3, or 3.3 by 10, I suppose, is 33. So we then have this fraction, and this decimal point also continues just going on forever. So to express that infinity, you just express the 0.3, leave it at that as a percentage to keep it clean, and as a decimal point, you just leave it in the 1000th place, and then that'll kind of give the indication that it's going to go on forever. The pie is split up in 3 shapes. 1, 2, 3. 3 pieces of the same block, and that's a third. Any questions? Okay, so this is a 10th, this is a 100th, and this is a 1000th. This is a whole. So in the 10th place, you multiply this number, or when you bring over a percentage point or a decimal point, you try to multiply this number by 100 to get this number. So since you've multiplied a 10th by 100, you technically could divide 100 by this number expressed. If you multiply this number by 10 and you divide it by 100, you could get, if you multiply this number by 10 and then multiply that number that you get, or divide that number that you get by 100 from 100, you could get this. Or you could keep things simple and just multiply 0.33 by 100 or 0.333 by 100, and then you'll easily get this number too. But this is the 10th place. This is the 1000th place. Or this is the 10th, 100th, and 1000th place. So when you multiply this by 100, it's going to push it over 2 zeros, 2 points, because there's 2 zeros. You just add in the zeros. So you're just going to push this over 1 0, 2 0, and that's how you get this one. So if you divide this number by 100, you then get a decimal. So let us cover our last little segment for fractions today. Keep things nice and simple. Keep things at the 4. 4 beetles. That's the only important number for me. So we have 1/4. 1/4. Now, 1/4 means that we've divided this pie up into 4s. And what's convenient about this is that since 100 is an even number, any or a lot of even numbers can thus fit in to that even number, especially since it's so big. So when you divide this pie up by 4s, you get only 0.25 slices of each pie. So this is 0.25, 0.25, 0.25, 0.25. The reason for that is that if you were to measure out, or if you divide 100 or one whole by 4, then you get 0.25 pieces. So let's use 100. If you divide 100 by 4, you get 25. 25 plus 25 equals 50. And then 25 plus 25 equals another 50. And then you add those two up and you get 100. It's 4 pieces of 100. So we then make that 25 into a decimal point, and then easily enough, if you multiply 0.25 by 100 to get that percentage point, then you get 25%, which is each segment of the pie. So this is 25%, 25%, 25%, 25%. 1/4 of the block, 1/4 of the block, 1/4 of the block, 1/4 of the block. So 1/4 of 100% is 25%. 1/4 of 1 whole is 0.25. And 1/4 of 1 is just 1/4. So, did you learn anything today? Yeah. You could consider yourself a genius now. I would say that you are on your way towards brilliance under my tutelage. You will be my protege until you defeat me, and I accept it nobly and gratefully, knowing that I've created a mind as great as yours in the world. So, we'll be conducting another lesson down the line, and if there's anything that you want to recap in this lesson, or if there's anything you want to explore in our next lesson, please don't hesitate to tell me, okay? In that case, return to your nuclear physics. I know it calls to you.